Whitestone Valley. So we're in Israel right now, and a lot of people come to Israel and they tour and they see different sites, but we wanted Chad to get a unique perspective, and so we're sending him way up into the sky and throwing him out of an airplane.
Tell my family I went out happy.
Okay. We'll say really nice things about you at your funeral if that happens. I didn't, totally want to bring this up, but do you think if you didn't make it, I could have your motorcycle?
I'm not nervous at all. Okay, Roy, how many jumps have you done? 6,000? It's a bonding moment between you and me?
We'll speak about it, don't worry.
Yeah?
I guarantee you Chad can't understand a word this
Hang
guy's
on
saying
to the
right now.
strap. The straps.
Your two legs will be under the head of no muscle. Okay, relax. The most
Hello, Richard.
Hello.
My name is Dan. I'm your cameraman, and we're going to do a skydiving together.
Dan the cameraman.
Oh yeah, you're excited, Richard?
I am feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
12,000 feet, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Have fun.
Thank
See you
you.
in the airplane.
All right.
Good luck, Chad. He'll be fine.
Richard.
okay.
Oh, my stomach's up in my throat. Yeah, I told these guys once I landed, we're standing there, I think I'm gonna puke. But I think it's just the adrenaline. Hey man, it's pretty cool sitting here on the banks of the Sea of Galilee, by a fire, possibly where Jesus and his disciples sat, watching you guys skip rocks out on the water earlier. First of all, I thought that just comes natural. You don't have to be taught to skip rocks. You just pick up rocks and do it. My 10-year-old would have been doing what you guys were doing. It made me wonder if Jesus and his disciples ever skipped rocks across the water. So, my favorite disciple is John, but the one that I relate to the most is Peter, because he's impulsive, he says things that he shouldn't have said, he has to be corrected a lot. But in Matthew 14, he's kind of my hero. And I think when most people read that account, they think it was a failure, but I think it was a win.
I think with Peter too, oftentimes you look back and you go, I can't believe he said that, I can't believe he did that, but he did something and he said something when everybody else was just kind of waiting to see. And I do appreciate that about Peter. Even though 90% of the time he messed it up, once in a while,
He get it right.
he said the right thing, he did the right thing. And I think this is one of those examples of you look back on it and you go, okay, he got it.
Yeah. So it's just before dawn, and the disciples have dealt with a little bit of a storm. They look out and they see this figure walking on the water. And you and I were talking earlier, there was a lot of superstition there.
A lot of the people, they had the superstition that like the underworld was under the water. And so even when they would fish, they weren't going out like into the middle of the lake. They were right along the shoreline. That's where they would cast their nets. That's where they would catch their
Stay
fish.
close to the bank.
So even when you see Jesus interacting with them, he's shouting from the shoreline. They can hear him because they're not that far off. And so for them to be out in the middle of the water, that was a little bit uncomfortable. That was a little bit foreign territory for them.
So Jesus sends these 12 non-seafaring people, Jewish people, shepherds, that kind of desert people, out into the deep water. And he walks out on the water just before dawn. They look, they think it's a ghost. And Jesus says, it's me, fear not.
And then Peter makes sure,
Yeah,
like, hey, can you confirm it? Can you just make sure, like, okay, Jesus, if it's you, then tell me to come out on the water.
yeah. And Jesus says, come on.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter steps out of the boat and he walks on water.
And I like that Jesus, he's not trying to convince him everything's going to be okay. He just gives the invitation.
Come on.
He doesn't give all the description. He doesn't give all the promise, hey, this is how it's going to work out. He just invites him. And now it's kind of the ball's in Peter's court.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Peter, of course, takes his eyes off Jesus and looks around, sees the waves. He starts to sink. And everybody looks at that and says, oh, failure, Peter, why can't he have faith? But I always think about, man, there's 11 guys still in the boat. And there's 2 guys who've walked on the water in the history of the world. One was Jesus and the other was Peter. So he starts to sink, and then he prays this real simple prayer.
Lord,
He says,
save me.
Lord, save me. And anytime, we were talking about this earlier, anytime somebody prays, Lord, save me, he does.
Yeah.
So Jesus doesn't have to think about it. He just does it.
Yeah. And in this sense, it's a super, practical, he didn't drown, he didn't get sucked under the water. But yeah, a lot of times when it comes to prayer, and I do the same thing, I get frustrated or confused or, why does God answer some prayers and not other prayers? I prayed, very specifically, God, I want you to do this thing, and it didn't happen. Yet I forget that this prayer, which is a massive prayer, I mean, you're asking a lot in that moment that you stand before God and you go, okay, God, save me. I know that I've done wrong. I know that I've rejected you in many ways just by my actions and beliefs and all of that. And to cry out, Lord, save me, and 100% of the time, God says yes to that prayer, and God answers that prayer. That's a beautiful thing in and of it. If that's the only prayer God ever answered, that's incredible.
So Jesus and Peter get back in the boat, step off the water back into the boat. And Jesus says, why didn't you believe? Why did you doubt? And I think people read that as a rebuke, but I kind of see a smile on Jesus' face, kind of a pat on the back, because to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat, and there's 11 guys that never moved.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you doubt? But at the same time, he chose to believe.
And is he just talking to Peter at that moment?
Yeah, he's probably talking to the other 11.
He's talking to the observers who've just been sitting there with the front row seat.
Yeah, I think there's so many things in life where God's asking us to trust him, to step out. And I think the biggest regret when it's all said and done and we look back over our lives is those times when we don't.
Mm-hmm.
The boat's more comfortable, seemingly the boat's more safe, but the boat's not where Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's probably a lot of things he wants us to teach us, wants us to experience, but it's on the other side of our fears.
Mm-hmm.